gotta eat. Hey,
In a bit, man.
Channel switched.
Your stats, and of course your combat deck, and what all the little things mean when you're looking at it. There are a bunch of videos already explaining this, so if you've already seen it, that's fine. Don't worry, this is obviously not for you. I just thought I would do a video just in case some of my viewers are unaware of how some of the things work if they haven't played games like this before, what all the little letters down in the corners mean, that sort of thing. So if you like the content, feel free to like and or subscribe. If you've got any tips for me for what I should do another Just the Tips video on, let me know in the comments down below. But otherwise, let's get into it. As you can see, we've got the stats before us here, our attributes, character attributes, and you can see that you've got down in here, in this bottom left-hand corner where you've got your damage stat, you've got strength, dexterity, and mobility. So mobility you can't actually change, but strength and dex scale depending upon how much you've got. So let's see, I try to put some more dex in there. It doesn't really increase the damage too much because I've already hit a soft cap with the amount of points that I can put into my dexterity. Whereas if I put some points into strength, it scales a lot faster because I haven't hit the soft cap yet. As far as mobility is concerned, that comes down to your weight, depending upon what you're wearing. So if you're wearing a lot more clothing, you're wearing heavier armor and whatnot, you will actually deal less damage overall. And you will actually see that in your move list when the different stats come up as to how much the moves scale depending upon your strength, your dexterity, or your mobility. So looking at the attack list, you can see here, this starting move, well, just disappears when I don't click on it anymore. Up in your top right hand corner, you've got it scales D off strength, D off dexterity, and B off mobility. So the idea with the letters is that the closer to the beginning of the alphabet, being A, is the best that you can get out of it. So a move like, say, this one doesn't scale off anything, it's just flat. Whereas this one, D, D, B, they're the same. Where's one that's actually different? Here we go, C, D, C. So this one's going to scale slightly better off your strength than it will your mobility and dexterity. Whereas, see if I can find a dexterity one, generally that'll be good. So E of strength, so obviously this is a windfall ability, so it's going to scale a lot more off your dexterity there with B and mobility B. So if you're not wearing as much armor, and if you've put your dexterity up quite a bit, then this attack will deal more damage. Now the one thing that does actually change this is of course S. So you can see there that my dexterity, this scales off S. S is the best you can get. So basically it goes A, B, C, D, E as it's going down, and then S is better than A. I don't know why, but that's just how it scales. Good for lettering, right? Now I should also show the fact that weapons also scale separately depending upon the style of the attack that you're using. So not so much the actual attack itself as the style of the attack. So you can see this scales C, B, B, B. But if I go up here and click, if I go in here and click a different one, B, C, 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 so that's going to scale better off that one, whereas this is S. So depending upon the attacks that or the style that you'll be using in the attacks, these weapons are going to straight up deal more damage. Lastly, I just want to quickly explain the attack deck that you've got here, or your combat deck. Obviously, you've got your main sequence here, you've got your alternative strikes here. So on my controller, these are all X. At the moment, it's probably not the best way that I've got it chained, but currently, you'll chain through this, and then on whatever your last one is, depending upon what it sets it to. So you see here, I've set my first chain to then set up and flow directly into the beginning of my front left. So this is my front right, which is generally where you'll start, and then it chains into your front left, which then chains into your back left, which then chains into your back right, which then chains straight back into top right. Now, whether or not this is the best way to set it up, this is just how I've done it currently, and then I've got alternative strikes to sort of mess with it as I go and put me into different attacks, or into different stances. So, just be aware that when you're doing this, these two, unless it's the final attack in that chain, it doesn't really matter too much where it ends up. So these two both chain into the front, doesn't really matter, but this one chains backwards, but it's not going to put me back to here, or this one here is not going to put me back up to the top. It only really is going to react on the very final one if you continue the chain. So as long as you keep continuing the chain and keep pressing that X button, you're just going to flow straight through and into your next row. It might be worth setting it up so that this one chains into this one, which chains into this one, changes into this one, depending upon how you want to fight. It might be worth setting up your alternative attacks to chain you straight into one thing that you've set up with, you know, heavy attacks to get rid of that person's blocking ability and drain their stamina as quickly as possible. It all depends on how you want to fight. I probably won't be going into great detail on exactly how to set up decks, and this was just quick tips on how to make it flow properly. So that is it for this Just the Tips video. I just wanted to quickly explain what all these letters mean and what they will relate to when you're actually changing your character up. So I hope this has been helpful. If you do have any suggestions on things I might want to do Just the Tips videos on in the future, comment it down below. If you have any questions for me or for the community, feel free to throw them down below, and hopefully I or the community will answer them for you. If you do like the content, feel free to like and or subscribe. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Oh my, what you do to me? Like lightning when I'm swimming in the sea. I can feel it when you hold me, when you touch me. It's so
Because it's you.
Stronger with you. New fragrances for the two of us.
Emporio Armani.
Hey guys, Scott here with a basic guide on making your first deck in Absolver, and it is less complicated than you think, but there are a lot of little nuances to it, and there are a lot of things that you should know when you're making your first deck, so it's as effective as it can be. There are a couple of things that you should definitely do, but first let's start with the basics, like, actually this is my main moveset. Let's start with a fresh. I believe this is the default combo list that the Windfall class starts with. Yeah, okay. So basically, let's look over what the icons mean. So you've got 4 separate sections. Each of these sections is basically these starting stances. Top right, top left, bottom right. all of these are related to that. So you can see right here, this is what I start with: the top right stance, top left, bottom right. So we can see this top right stance, we have a punch and then some sort of bigger punch. So we're gonna press, the basic attack button twice, and we're gonna do that moveset. And that'll chain together. That's a 2-hit combo that you can chain as long as you want. So, that's cool, but that's not very threatening. So you can see, starts on the right, and then this symbol right here indicates where this move will end up. So this will chain into pretty much the same direction, into another top right, which is why when I chain these together, this ends in a top right as well, which leads all the way back to a top right, which is to the top right, to top right, top right. It's a 2-hit combo. You basically made a loop. Now, that loop is not very threatening. You need some form of pressure, and that's where alternative attacks comes in. So basically, this is, top right, or top left, bottom right. It goes in a line. That's
How goes it? Jeros here with another Just the Tips video.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Zulo here, back with another vid. This time we're going to be going over the top 5 beginner tips and tricks for Absolver. Tip number 1. Learning new moves. In the beginning of the game, you can expect to start with next to nothing, except your stock stats and moves. An important basic step needed to help progress is unlocking new moves. To do this, you must not rush your attacks on an enemy, but instead allow them to throw punches and combos at you. If you see this icon above their head, that means you are progressing your knowledge on that move. Once it reaches the end of the circle, you unlock that move and be allowed to use it in your combat deck. An important thing to note is that if you die by your opponent, all progress in the move will be lost. So spar until you feel like you have learned enough from your enemy, but allow yourself enough wiggle room to still be able to finish them off. Tip number 2. Weight distribution. As I said before, in the beginning of the game, you will start with nothing, but of course, as you progress through the game and defeat enemies, you will sometimes be rewarded with an item drop. One of these items you may receive is gear for your character. If you don't come from a background of playing Dark Souls or a game that utilizes a weight distribution feature, you must be very wary of the gear you equip. For instance, if you end up decking your character out in a bunch of armor so you take less damage, you can expect to attack very slowly and have very low stamina. So as you go on unlocking more equipment, be sure to take that into account. Tip number 3. Predictability.
What's up, prospects? It's no doubt 6 hours, 360 minutes before we are allowed entry into the land of Adol. Oh, baby, I'm fucking pumped. I'm ready. I'm done my homework. I'm ready to go out and play with the boys. Now, before we get into Absolver, I wanted to share a couple tips with you guys. Some guides if you're starting out brand new, cliff notes, if you will. I collabed with Spectrophilian to come up with these guides, so big shout out to him. Check him out. Also, big shout out to Grey Maiden. She's responsible for sharing the guide that I read you guys in my last video. So much respect to the homegirl Grey Maiden. Now, by the way, big shouts out to you all for checking out my last video. That's at like 30,000 views, man. That blew my mind. So much love and respect to you all the viewers. Let's get back into it, all right? So if you're thinking about using Windfall as your first style choice, the defensive ability to be aware of is Avoid. That's quad-directional, meaning you can use it left, right, up, or down. Now, something to be aware of is dodging to the sides will expose you to sweeping attacks. So be mindful of that when you're manning this style. Next is Forsaken. Now, the defensive ability for Forsaken is Parry. That's bi-directional, meaning you can use it left or right. When it's successful, the opponent is stunned for a split second, which gives you a chance to attack. Now, be mindful. Spamming parry will hurt you more than it can help you. And because it's quad-directional, that also means that there's more room for error. So be mindful of all these things when considering Forsaken. It's going to be a big learning curve, but once you get it, it's going to definitely pay off. And last but not least, the last of the starting styles is Cult. This defensive ability is Absorb. Now, you will not be staggered by the hits that you absorb, and while you still take the damage from the hits you absorb, you can regain the health that you lost over time by attacking the opponent after a successful absorb. The absorb mechanic is broken by guard break attacks, so definitely keep that in mind. But once again, as with all these styles, it depends on how your play style meshes with all the different fight styles, so experimenting is key. Next, swords and war gloves, aka battle mittens. With swords, you do extra damage to the opponent called cut damage. If the opponent blocks, you will not be staggered by the attack. Now, first style choice, the guy that I read you guys in my last video. So much respect to the homegirl Grey Maiden. Now, by the way, big shouts out to you all for checking out my last video. That's at like 30,000 views, man. That blew my mind. So much love and respect to you all the viewers. Let's get back into it, all right? So if you're thinking about using Windfall as your first style choice, the defensive ability to be aware of is Avoid. That's quad-directional. Meaning you can use it left, right, up, or down. Now, something to be aware of is dodging to the sides will expose you to sweeping attacks. So be mindful of that when you're manning this style. Next is Forsaken. Now, the defensive ability for Forsaken is Parry. That's bi-directional, meaning you can use it left or right. When it's successful, the opponent is stunned for a split second, which gives you a chance to attack. Now, be mindful. Spamming parry will hurt you more than it can help you. And because it's quad-directional, that also means that there's more room for error. So be mindful of all these things when considering Forsaken. It's going to be a big learning curve, but once you get it, it's going to definitely pay off. And last but not least, the last of the starting styles is Cult. This defensive ability is Absorb. Now, you will not be staggered by the hits that you absorb, and while you still take the damage from the hits you absorb, you can regain the health that you lost over time by attacking the opponent after a successful absorb. The absorb mechanic is broken by guard break attacks,